Okay, everybody, when you're doing machine applique, it's nice to use a stabilizer underneath your fabric. If you're doing a mug rug kit that you got from us, we supply batting, and if you're stitching through batting,
in the club.
Yeah, if you're stitching through batting, and your piece is ironed to it, that is enough stabilizer for the stitches to hold to nicely. But otherwise, you're just going to have a piece of fabric onto another piece with a little bit of fusible in between. Doesn't give it much stability for your stitches. So I like to use a stabilizer. This is a very light stabilizer. It's called Stitch and Tear Lite. It's made by Pellon, and the number is 835. You can buy this at your big box stores. They sell it in smaller boxes. I buy it by the bolt. This was 25 yards. It'll last a long time. So at any rate, you do want a stabilizer, and I'll show you what I like about this stabilizer, or why I like this stabilizer. For one thing, it seems to be the lightest one that you can get on the market. So I'm just going to stitch a little bit around this circle in the center here of this little piece. Now I'm doing a blanket stitch here, and I'm going to do half of this as a blanket stitch, and then I'm going to switch it to a satin stitch. One of the things this stabilizer likes to boast about is that it is doesn't distort your stitches. Well, yes, it will. I guess any stabilizer will, unless you're using something extremely light. So I'm going to switch this now to a satin stitch, and it's not super close, but it's closer. In real world, I would have cut that away. Okay, so now these have come around. You'll see that's kind of a makeshift satin stitch, not as tight as I would like it if it were a regular piece, but you know, zigzag stitched around the edge, see? And we have the blanket stitches. Now this stabilizer works great when you're pulling stitches away from, you know, you just tear it away. See how it does fine when you're pulling away from the outer edge, which is, will go all the way around this with the satin stitch. Now when you're inside, and you still have to remove the paper from the inside portion, so I'll make a little nick here, and you'll be able to see that you can pull it pretty good away from your satin stitches, especially if you can imagine those were closer together. But this is going to distort your blanket stitches. If you just give that a yank, you're going to be messing them up. So you have to be really careful with this anyway. So that being said, Stitch and Tear Lite is probably the best thing on the market, but yet you still have to be careful that you don't distort your stitches with that. Now, if you don't have Stitch and Tear Lite and you're in a pinch, something that I do at home is I'll use like a wax paper. The big box outlet stores, like, well, I'll just say it, Sam's and Costco, they have, for in the restaurant area, they'll have little boxes of pop-up pieces of wax paper. They're like smaller squares, which is generally all you need. And truly, they are about the weight of this tissue, which actually came off the Stitch and Tear Lite paper. So this you can also use and stitch. Now I'm going to switch this back to a blanket stitch, take it back to the same stitches we were using. I'm just going to come along here. Let's just pretend there was another piece. So you can see how nicely your machine will sew through this. But when you pull it away, of course on the straight side it's going to pull away nicely. See, just nice smooth edge. When you come along to these, not so great. However, a lightweight tissue is easier to pull away, and you still get the same nice result as you did with the other. It's just solely to stabilize your fabric while you're doing your stitches, but you do have to remove it. So the removal process is something you have to consider. Just make sure that if you buy the Stitch and Tear, you buy Stitch and Tear Lite. Otherwise, it's like the little devil to pull out. It's like pulling concrete from your stitches. So that's my tip. Happy stitching.